Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with works I just didn't get until I heard the version by. We'll get to the version by in a moment. The work that I just didn't get was, believe it or not, Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, one of the most beloved works ever written for the instrument. Oh my gosh, what was wrong with me? Well, it seems quite a bit. Here are my problems. And these were just my problems, not anyone else's problems. Yes, the piece had beautiful tunes, lovely tunes, wonderful, wonderful melodies. First of all, I never much cared for the solo violin. I always found its tone irritating. And it took me quite a long time to begin to enjoy listening to solo violin music of any kind. I mean, never mind like the Bach sonatas and partitas. I mean, violin concertos. Piano concertos seem to be just so much better because you could do so much more with a piano as a contrast to a full orchestra. I understood solo violins in chamber music. I mean, I always loved the Franck sonata, for example. But even then, I was very, very picky about violinists that I could tolerate. I had an aversion to that scratchy, scrapey, screechy violin tone, and I despised double stops. You know what double stops are? You know, when you play two notes at once on the violin, and they sound like you're scraping your fingernails across a blackboard, and they go like that. Half the time, you can't even detect individual notes. They just sound like some sort of, I don't know, freeway pile up in string terms. There's something just ugly about them intrinsically. And to play double stops beautifully, whoa, that is a skill. That is a major, major skill. There are triple stops too, but they get arpeggiated mostly. They go, gosh, it's like there's a friend of mine, what was the wonderful expression? They sing like a hinge, that sort of thing. So, and the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto has more than its fair share of double-stopped passages. And it was often played by hack and slash and burn violinists, whose idea of virtuosity was just to attack the instrument with a hacksaw. I mean, because I didn't like it, so I didn't buy recordings of it. I saw it live when I went to see concerts that had other things that interested me more. And so I had to get through the Tchaikovsky. And that did not endear it to me because most of those performances were so-so. But then one day, let me get to the point, I went to the New Haven Symphony and they were doing the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto, and it was very busy and crowded, so I knew people were there for the concerto, not for the rest of it. And the soloist was Nathan Milstein, who was getting on in years, but he was still in very good shape. They had the picture of him where he was like 30 years younger. Then he walked out and he was this gray-haired little man, and I was like, oh, okay. But wow. Oh my goodness, what a difference. So I ran out and grabbed his recording. Yay, here it is, the one that was available, which was with the Vienna Phil and Claudio Abbado on Deutsche Grammophon. When was it recorded? 1973, it looks like. Somewhere in there, yes. Okay, so 1973. And it's just as fabulous as I remembered seeing it. And I saw Milstein do the piece about 4 more times after that. It was his calling card. It was his musical calling card. And I mean, nobody owns a concerto, but to the extent anyone could be said to own a concerto, it was Milstein. Who was a pupil of Leopold Auer, who was the original dedicatee, who rewrote the concerto. One of the other things that irritated the crap out of me about the Tchaikovsky concerto is that, Auer did his own edition, which became the more frequently played edition. And there are cuts, traditional cuts that people make in the first movement and the finale, which you may or may not take. And that pissed me off too, because once I began to enjoy the work, then I being obsessive compulsive, I of course wanted to hear the original, and then I got into a whole thing about the cuts. Now I don't give a damn. It makes no difference which version they use, how many cuts they take. As long as most of it's there, I'm happy, because they're not really all that significant. They just aren't. And the rewrites to the violin part, most people don't even hear unless they're violinists. And the truth of the matter is, when it comes to this concerto, all I care about is how gorgeous the violin playing is. And what made Milstein's performance special to me was the complete lack of odious, vulgar violin playing. I mean, the very opening, the beautiful legato, that silky singing tone, his double stops, which actually allow you to hear the notes of which they're comprised, the lightness and brilliance of the finale, perfectly balanced against the orchestra. You can actually hear the notes. Not when I do it, but when he does it, you can. And the way that the charming woodwind accompaniments back the violin. I mean, he just knows where he is at all times with respect to the orchestra. And even the slow movement, the slow movement is odd because it's written for a muted violin. It's like Tchaikovsky was determined to muck up the tone of the instrument no matter what. I know he wanted it to sound more folk-like, and it can be absolutely gorgeous. Of course, it can be. But it can also sound just kind of foggy, murky. And here it has that silky, veiled quality, but it doesn't sound like you're missing voluptuousness of pure sonority with Milstein. I mean, it's just a wonderful, wonderful performance, and it turned me on to the piece. And now I can listen to it, and I still dislike most recordings of it, actually. I mean, when I see them in concert, usually, there are some performances, I think, that kind of spoil you. And Milstein is one of those because, you do expect a certain level of artistry. And you want to know that people understand the music at a deeper level beyond the mere, technique issues that it presents, whatever version they do. It's a very difficult work to play. And if you cut it or you don't cut it, Tchaikovsky's first movement form is dysfunctional, period. There's nothing you can do about it. You just get past it. You really do. I mean, it doesn't bother me one way or another. All I could tell you is that his proximate inspiration for writing the work was Lalo's Symphony Espagnole. So that goes to show why maybe there were some formal issues. Anyway, look. I mean, we can go back and forth on that all we want, but the bottom line is that this is a glorious performance of the work. And if you have any doubts, most people don't. Most people just take it and love it. And I so admire people who can do that. I wasn't one of them, but this one, Milstein Abbado, is the one to get. This is the particularly stupid Penguin Classics reissue, coupled with a fabulous Mendelssohn concerto, too. It came with a personalized essay, in this case by Jan Morris, which is just awful. But it's still, performance is what it is. So, Milstein doing Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto. That's what did it for me. I'm curious to hear your impressions, whether it was love at first listen or whether it took a little more effort. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.